Hi there mate, how's it going? It's Benji here, and this is a breakdown and review of Yellowstone Season 5 Episode 2 titled The Sting of Wisdom. In Episode 2, we see just how determined John is to quash the Market Equities airport project, as he and Beth pressure Jamie to draft an executive order. But first, John has to fire his chief of staff and make Beth accept that position, because he doesn't want to deal with all the usual pointless meetings, which are set up by the regular old political operatives. He asks his assistant Clara to bring in the chief of staff Jim and fires him on the spot. Linnell can see that John is out of his element, so she explains to him why he has to meet with all sorts of people around the state in order to change laws that will serve his agenda. Otherwise, his adversaries will just wait for 4 years, and once his term is up, it'll be business as usual. He won't have achieved anything. Jamie, in the meantime, argues against cancelling the airport lease. He leased out that portion of the ranch back in Season 3 when he still had power of attorney over the ranch, and he did that in order to avoid losing the land completely. He prevented the state from forcibly buying the land using eminent domain. I think I made a mistake in my previous episode breakdown by saying that the state actually used that power, but no, it was just a lease. The Dunns still own the land. Linnell agrees with Jamie and says that if it wasn't for Jamie's lease, this issue would have been raised to the land board and they would have voted in favor of the state owning a part of the Yellowstone Ranch. That's where eminent domain would come into play, and then the airport would definitely be built. There would be nothing John could do. So at that point, Jamie seems to have made the right decision, but John still wants to cancel state funding for the airport, and he doesn't give a frag about the lease agreement. He'd like Jamie to find a way, even though Jamie insists that they'll be sued and lose for wrongful termination of the lease. He fears that then Market Equities will be able to buy the land outright, because halting the build will create real damages, and the only way John will be able to pay for the penalty will be to sell his land. This is where Beth chimes in, pointing out the fact that the ranch is an agricultural zone, so they can use that argument to cancel state funding. That is if John can convince 2 county commissioners to deny Market Equities' request to rezone. With no rezoning, John will have a reason to cancel the lease, that reason being the fact that an airport can't be built on an agricultural zone. That evening, John meets with the commissioners, asking them to deny the rezoning request. He says they shouldn't worry about the financial benefits of the airport, because the state will make up for it by doubling property taxes on non-residents. John also assures them that there will be no litigation, because right after canceling the lease, he will put the entire ranch into a conservation easement program, which will limit activities that can be done on that land. Nobody will be able to build condos, hotels, or airports on it. That's a nifty move because it will protect the ranch's integrity and wholeness. The downside, as Beth points out, is that they won't be able to sell a part of the land when they need some money. So let's say John passes away in a few years and the kids want to sell off 20% of the land to raise some money. Well, they'll have a hard time doing that because the easement program will limit activities that can be done on that land, like we discussed. The Dunns will still be able to run the ranch, but that's about it. The commissioners vote with John, which allows him to sign the executive order drafted by Jamie, and Caroline loses it at the Market Equities offices, but at least her fixer Sarah Atwood has arrived now, and just like Ellis, she notices the fact that Jamie isn't happy about this. He will be her first target, and in the meantime, Caroline orders her goons to file a lawsuit with any charge they can think of. This entire political storyline was unexpectedly awesome to watch, and I can't believe Yellowstone has turned into a political drama, and a great one at that. It's always had political elements in it, though politics hadn't always taken center stage, like it does here. John's brief speech when he signed the executive order was well written. He talked about how building a city in the Montana wilderness is an attack on their freedoms, because it would take away the people's freedom to drink clean water and breathe clean air. It would strain the ability of their schools and hospitals and their police, which would in turn force them to raise taxes, and that would strain their families, to the point where they would wonder if they could actually live there anymore. John goes, quote, "That's not progress in my mind. That's an invasion." and the invasion is over." End quote. We go back a few decades to see what Jon is talking about when he mentions being able to drink clean water. In this flashback, his animals and fish are dying all over the place, and this is caused by chemicals sprayed in order to build a cell tower. The construction foreman is a bit of a dick, and he's aptly named Dick, so Jon gives him a taste of his own medicine by getting Rip and company to spray Dick's house with those chemicals, and they spray Dick too. That is gonna sound really weird out of context. But anyway, this flashback shows that this has been a very long fight for Jon. Checking in on Monica, she'll be fine physically, but understandably she is still feeling the impact of losing her baby. Monica wants the baby to be buried at the ranch so that they can always visit, and she asks Casey to talk to his father about it. She also brings up what Casey said after his sweat ceremony at the end of season 4, the fact that he saw the quote-unquote end of us. Casey responds by saying that losing the baby doesn't have anything to do with that, and that he would have to choose the end of us, which is something he will never do. Back at the ranch, Carter rides Jon's horse and works with all the other ranch hands throughout the day. Everything is going well and Carter is feeling like a real cowboy until his horse steps into a badger hole and gets injured. Rip shoots the horse to give it a peaceful death, and Carter's arm is broken, though he will be fine. That's not the last animal death in this episode, as Ryan and Colby get permits to kill a pack of wolves that ate the remains of one of the cows. Ryan doesn't think the wolves killed the cow, but they certainly had a feast afterward, and that is dangerous because they got a taste and they might return for some more. They do indeed return. Ryan and Colby are prepared and they shoot them using thermal scopes. However, they later find out that these wolves are wearing GPS collars, or they were wearing, meaning that they're from the national park, so Ryan and Colby could go away for a long time if this comes to light because their permits don't give them license to shoot these particular wolves. They call Rip and he comes to help them. He tells them to remove the collars and ride to the park while moving like wolves, so it will look like the wolves went back to the park. They end up tying the collars to pieces of wood and chuck them in the river. The collars will eventually get loose and it will look like the wolves lost the collars in the river. At least that's the plan. But at the end of the episode, one piece of wood gets stuck, which might bring about the first scandal of Jon's tenure. So, another decent episode here. The main storyline was intriguing and refreshing. Unlike most episodes in season 4, the show's main focus was clear, and that makes any show a lot more watchable. I like this new character Sarah, so I'm glad she's in the game now. The wolf storyline provided some nice change of pace as we went back and forth between the halls of government in Helena to the Montana wilderness. It was a rough outing for Carter, but at least now Rip has taught him to keep one eye on the ground and one eye on the cattle. I suppose that's some character growth, but Jon's horse wasn't as lucky. Beth's comically over-the-top tirades toward Jamie and the professor at the bar had me rolling my eyes, but it is what it is. And finally, I'm glad Casey will come back to the ranch now and spend some time with his father after leaving in the middle of season 4. Well, what did you think about the second episode of the season? Leave your comments down below, like this video if you've enjoyed this breakdown, and subscribe for more movie reviews and TV show breakdowns. I'll be covering the whole season, so keep your eyes peeled. That is it for now, take care and see you in the next video.